Namaskar, good afternoon and welcome to India Foundation Conversation. It is indeed a great pleasure to have with us a very distinguished guest today for the conversation joining us. His Excellency Kenneth da Nobrega, the Brazilian Ambassador to India. Thank you, Your Excellency, for joining us today afternoon, and it's indeed great to have you here in this forum.
Thank you very much. This is my pleasure being here.
Yeah, thank you. So, to begin with the conversation, it is indeed a very interesting time for India. And as we are nearing to the G20 summit, which is upcoming, but we also recently concluded with the Brics Summit. So to have like the conversation around to share your thoughts on it, I would like to know from your end, Your Excellency, what is the main takeaway for the Brazilian government from the recent Brics Summit in Johannesburg?
Well, a main takeaway is doubtlessly the expansion of the group. We are quite satisfied with the inclusion of partners, important partners of Brazil in the group. And the mere fact that 30 countries or so manifested interest in joining the group speaks in and of itself. And perhaps it sends some messages to the world at large. First, I think an urge to concretize inclusiveness and multipolarity in the world. I think also an interest for new spaces of discussion, of new spaces for consensus building, and so on. And of course, it also signals that multilateral institutions of governance are not delivering perhaps what they should deliver. Peace and security, inclusiveness, concrete actions in facing the global challenges of the majority of humanity, meaning food security, access to energy, fighting poverty, and also fighting climate change in the sense of not only mitigation of climate change, but also adaptation to climate change. So I think that this move, this very solid or interest for becoming a member of Brics, I think conveys a very strong message to the world.
Yeah, as you rightly mentioned, so taking away from the Brics Summit, the recently held one, how satisfied is your president and the government currently there with the official declaration and the concrete decisions that has been made at the recent Brics Summit?
We are quite satisfied. You know that when the debate was going on in Brazil regarding siding with the countries within Brics who wanted really push for an expansion. Other countries were not so convinced. President Lula was one of the first to say, no, the expansion is a good thing, and Brics does not exist to compete. Brics is there for inclusion. And also he even considered in the future having, for example, a summit G7 Brics. I think just as an example of the idea of inclusiveness, not competition really.
Very interesting. So to take in like as Brazil takes over as the G20 chairmanship next year, we see that in the same multilateral forum as Brics, Brazil wishes to increase the Latin America's role in Brics, and with the recent expansion of membership, we saw that Argentina's inclusion is the first step in that direction. So how does Brazil see the inclusion of new members in Brics, and what effects could this expansion, according to you, have on the global economic order over time?
Well, when we discussed, you know that there was a previous discussion among members of Brics regarding the criteria for admitting new partners. And for Brazil, geographic diversity was one of the main criteria that should be taken into account. So for us, it's more than natural that Argentina becomes a member of Brics. It's one of our main partners. It's a South American country. is a member of G20. But also when we speak of geographic diversity, we also favored including countries from the Middle East, from Africa, from Asia. So we are quite satisfied with the results. And of course, an expanded BRICS is a country with more, a group with a more economic clout. I think I read a figure that now the expanded BRICS will account for 37% of world GDP and 40, perhaps I'm wrong, 46 or 44% of world's population. So it has more economic clout. It represents a wider share of the world of humanity, and has been spread geographically. So all these factors sum up to having a more influential group, certainly.
Takeaway from your reply, it's like indeed interesting that you mentioned about the economic clout, which brings to my next question that does Brazil see the other body, Mercosur, as a whole kind of getting institutionally connected with BRICS? Will it be a natural process that Mercosur and BRICS will be naturally connected now that its two largest members, Brazil and Argentina, both are in the BRICS?
Well, Mercosur is a formal international organization. BRICS, it's an established, well-established coordination group of countries which are like-minded in more than one aspect. So I do not see how these countries could establish formal relations, institutional relations. But brainstorming a little bit about it, because just we cannot discard in the future, for example, the establishment of a permanent dialogue mechanism between Mercosur and BRICS. Not a formal one, because these are two different animals, so to speak, but a permanent dialogue mechanism.
So then, Ambassador, what do you think are the main factors driving interest in BRICS, especially across the global south?
I think one of the facts that one of the factors, better spoken, that attracted so many countries is inclusiveness and multipolarity. I think that the global south, I think, is conveying a message that it needs to be included more in the big clubs. With the big countries. So in BRICS they will find, and I can say that because I was a former sociable of BRICS, you find an atmosphere, a dynamic where you can really interact and put forward your priorities. And then there is a really a very solid spirit, consolidated spirit of trying to build consensus. Sometimes the consensus is very complex to build, but the spirit of wanting to reach consensus, this is an important political dimension of the dynamics of BRICS, inside dynamics of BRICS.
I really like that concept of inclusivity and the spirit of consensus building. So when we're talking about global south, just to put forward just an add-on to it, that there is a lot of talks about global south, global north. So do you think any type of contestation occurring in the near future, or will it be still a consensus kind of a building body?
Well, from the Brazilian point of view, as I said at the outset, we do not see BRICS, and President Lula has clearly made that very crystal clear, is that BRICS is there for inclusion, not for competing with the global, with G7, for example. BRICS for us, it's not anti-West, as for example, we don't think that G7 is anti-South. So we don't conceive the interaction between groups, not just between these two groups, among groups of political coordination as an exercise of confrontation. Mm-hmm. It's not in the spirit of our diplomacy. Mm-hmm. Never has been.
So, like when we are talking about the financial institutions, how will the BRICS financial institutions help further in mobilizing resources for infrastructure and sustainable development projects, I would say, mainly in emerging markets and in developing countries? What are your views on that?
Well, the so-called new BRICS banks, but it's the new development bank, which is a bank which is part of the family of multilateral banks, multilateral institutions. So it aims at joining forces with other multilateral institutions in order to provide more financing, more financial products, diversified financial products for the developing countries. And we know that this is complex because after the pandemic, after this quite unequal recovery, unbalanced recovery of economies throughout the world after the pandemic, to develop financial products which can preserve the solidity, the financial solidity of the banks, multilateral banks, and at the same time take into account the need of countries who need financing but have some challenges regarding balancing budget, regarding implementing social policies against hunger, against poverty. So what I can say about it first is NDB wants to join forces with other multilateral banks. Second, it wants really to listen to the South. Mm-hmm. This is the very important point. As a diplomat has been active, was active in the multilateral forum, it was always a challenge to mainstream developing countries' issues in the discussions in the big multilateral fora. It was very challenging. BRICS is a locus where you can mainstream this discussion, and on the basis of this discussion, you can develop good financial products and understand their needs. And also a point, if I may also raise additionally, is the fact that, of course, financing is a very important pillar of promoting development. But another pillar is trade. And here, in our declaration, on the occasion of the Johannesburg Summit, we can read that the group is concerned with this kind of neo-protectionism which has been introduced on the basis of environmental concerns. Of course, we are not saying that environmental concerns are not legitimate concerns. The point is how this is going to be implemented. Because I would doubt whether when you introduce new barriers and regulations to trade on the basis on environmental concerns, when you do that, you have to bring into the discussions also the pillars of climate change law, meaning common and differentiated, the principle of common and differentiated responsibilities. Because if you put a barrier against an export of a small country who has historically contributed zero to climate change, but has an industry which a kind of heavier carbon footprint, this country will not be able to export to important markets in the world. So trade as a channel to induce growth and produce development, which is so important for developing countries, can be blocked by this kind of neo-protectionism. So I'm not saying that environmental concerns are important, but let's do this really with care and understanding what you are causing, what are the consequences to the global South when you introduce this kind of barrier.
Absolutely. I mean, couldn't agree more with you when you're talking about the consequences, and which makes us think more about it, the processes, and how we can get on it together, and more with an inclusive approach, and more on consensus building, and more concern about the consequences. So how would Brazil define the role, scope, and potential of the new 11-member BRICS? And we see that there are more than 20 more candidates who are interested to join this grouping. So what are your views on it?
I think that first, diversity is part of the Brazilian DNA, and we favor diversity. The idea that the BRICS is becoming more diverse means that more ideas, more concerns are becoming part of our internal discussion. And also we can claim more legitimacy in terms of the consensus we will build within this enlarged group. So this is very important, important elements, because the fact, just to make a point, we are not saying that BRICS will be an alternative to the reform of the multilateral international governance institutions. We are not saying that it's an alternative. I think it's a group which can contribute in the spirit of building blocks.
So is it sort of the new membership with the new 11-member membership? Do you see BRICS as a sort of non-aligned movement or a bloc capable to providing a better balance in the G20 and the UN Security Council, of course, and maybe pushing for the reform of the latter?
Yes.
Your thoughts, please.
I think that first, this idea I'm a bit cautious when it comes to establishing these historical analogies, trying to understand facts and situations which are happened in different period of times, submitting these facts to a same paradigm of thought. I think this can limit our capacity of analysis in the sense of seeing unprecedented things happening, in the sense that perhaps some of these developments are just unprecedented and perhaps contributing. We are going to see this in some years ahead, contributing to the evolution of international governance. So I'm a bit cautious about establishing those kind of analogies, but surrendering a little bit to your provocation, I would say that, of course, you can say that the non-aligned movement and the BRICS establishment and then expansion were created in a moment of big global challenges, dangerous challenges. I think they were also created as a response to the need of making more countries heard, having their concerns heard in multilateral fora. I think also groups which tried to chart new courses, offering different alternative solutions to global challenges. So we could perhaps envisage some points of contact between the two initiatives, but I would be cautious in drawing conclusions based on an analogy. You see.
Very interesting. So how do you see this is completely not related to the multilateral grouping, but in terms of India and Brazil bilateral relations, how do you see India and Brazil bilateral relations in the global multilateral order?
Well, our bilateral relations are 76 years old, started in 1947. So, and throughout those 7 decades, we coordinated consistently, in a very consistent and continuous way, in a multilateral fora, I think that all Brazilian diplomats who have been active in the last 40 years in multilateral fora have engaged in coordination with their Indian colleagues. So this has built throughout the years confidence between Brazilian and Indian diplomacy. So, and I think confidence, trust, is a key word here when it comes to engage in new initiatives, in new coordinations. So I think that based on this trust, we have two countries which are of sheer size together, GDP, population, territorial extension, biodiversity, importance in the climate change debates or negotiations throughout the world. I think we are the two largest democracies in the global south. I think that with all these assets, we can be mainstays in debating multilateral fora and in many groups, in the G20, within Brics, within IPSA and so on, and within G4, we can really make a contribution and claim that we are legitimate players because we represent a sizable part of humanity, and also because we have been traditionally very vocal in multilateral fora in defending and presenting the claims and the plights of the developing world. So I think that we can make a difference together.
Thank you, Ambassador. So I would like to end with one last question. Right. I would like to know your comments on it, as India is at a very important time during the year. We are hosting the G20 summit. The next chairmanship is with Brazil. So what are the key expectations or will be the key takeaways from this summit as we pass on the chairmanship to Brazil next year? I
think that of course, I'm not involved directly, hands-on in negotiating G20, as you know. But I think that one takeaway is a good measure of continuity. We have had before Indonesia, then we have India, and then Brazil, the third big emerging country presiding the G20. And I think we will see continuity in the way we see inclusiveness, multipolarity, and also mainstreaming the concerns and the challenges faced by the global south, because after all, it's the majority of humanity lives in the global south. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Ambassador, for joining us today. It's been an absolute honor to have this conversation with you and joining us today at the India Foundation Conversations. We look forward to have you more in our conversations, and thank you for your insightful comments. Thank you. Thank you, viewers, for joining us today. It's indeed a pleasure to have you all. Please follow us on our social media handles and watch out for our India Foundation space. Thank you.